came back, and now they are in the race. But in addition to the 4 council members that you mentioned who did not sign for the certification of the vote, we just heard recently, just a few minutes ago, that Michel Martelly has said he will not participate in the second round unless the president of the Electoral Council and the Director General of the Electoral Council, unless they were both fired. He also is asking for 3 ministers from the current government to be removed from office. The Justice Minister, Paul Denis, the Social Affairs Minister, Germain, and then the Interior Minister, Bien-Aimé. So he's asking for these 3 people to be fired, and also the Board of Election President and the Board of Election Director General. So it's nothing is certain as far as what is going to happen.
That's an interesting development regarding Martelly. We'll have to follow up on that indeed. I mean, pretty significant. Now, obviously, the OAS has been integral to all of this, called in by the Haitian government and the Electoral Council to kind of oversee the process. Earlier in the day, just down the road from us, I spoke to the OAS Secretary General, Jose Miguel Insulza. I asked him why it took so much pressure for so long from so many people for the Haitian Electoral Council and the leaders to finally endorse the OAS recommendations.
First, I think that there was concern about the results. The results were delivered, and there was a problem with the leaking of the results and all that, which was really also created a lot of a situation of mistrust. I very much regret that that happened. It was really, I don't know who did it, but it was a very negative action. So there was there was a lot of suspicion coming and going, and a lot of things were said. But I would say that I've been to Haiti a lot of times, and I don't think that there were too many threats, because threats don't really work in Haiti. They can really, in the end, go back against you.
Mark Weisbrot, the OAS Secretary General, said, I don't think there were too many threats. Threats don't work in Haiti. You obviously disagree with him.
Oh, it's obvious that there were threats. These were public. These were public threats from the United States government, from the French government. They're all over the media. So there's no doubt about that. And I think it's you know, frankly, it's kind of shameful that Secretary Insulza is allowing the OAS to be used as an instrument not only of U.S. foreign policy, which it's not supposed to be, but the worst, most anti-democratic kind of foreign policy that this country has to offer in the region. So it's really quite terrible. And I don't, as I said, I don't think it's good for Haiti. It's not good for anybody, because you're not going to get a legitimate government this way. They should have simply supported, drawn the logical conclusion from their own report, which would have been to rerun the elections.
Okay, let's get Harry Fouché's comment on what you just heard there from the OAS Secretary General.
Indeed, Eamon, I think on the 28th of November, 2010, I did call for the cancellation of the election, and I think that's what should have been done, because the process was so flawed, it was difficult to fix it. And it's also kind of paradoxical that the OAS was the first body, international body, to come out and said the election was fine, through its spokesperson, Colin Grinderson, in Port-au-Prince. And then that same OAS came back later on to fix what was wrong with the election. So it's a game, it's a nasty game, and we don't think the Haitian people deserve that. The election should have been scrapped, and new elections called for to enable the Haitian people's voices to be heard.
Okay, let's listen to what Jose Miguel Insulza had to say about the possible imminent return of Jean-Bertrand Aristide.
I think it does have a lot of influence. There's a lot of influence in Haiti. He has a lot of followers. I think that the fact that many people follow him makes it necessary to consider his presence if he comes.
Now, fascinating stuff that he doesn't actually diminish the possible influence of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, does he, the OAS Secretary General? I mean, was this René Préval's joker card that he played to everybody that pressured him to kick Jude Salestein out of the presidential race? Was Aristide the special joker card?
Well, I don't think this is the law. I mean, Aristide has the right to return to the country. He's a Haitian citizen. And it's unfortunate, too, that the OAS is not supporting international law here either in this case. They should have, for the last 7 years, the United States has worked illegally to keep President Aristide out of his own country. And of course, they overthrew him in 2004. It was a 4-year effort where they cut off aid to the country and destroyed the economy, and at the same time pumped in many millions of dollars into an opposition, including convicted murderers and armed rebels, in order to overthrow that government. And they took him out of the country on a plane. And by the way, we were talking about threats. They threatened, according to multiple reports in the press, from various witnesses, they have threatened Préval this time with doing the same thing, with flying him out of the country on a plane. So, this is what's wrong here. This is the problem. People talk about Haiti having a failed state. It's a failed state because the United States has repeatedly destroyed the state in Haiti.
But isn't there a bit of a romanticization about Aristide in many ways? Because he was famed for creating the chimeras, notoriously cracking down on dissent. People talk about Duvalier's gangs, if you like. There were similar accusations towards Jean-Bertrand Aristide. Would the return of Aristide not create violence on the streets?
Well, see, this is a false equivalence that was part, again, the United States poured many, many millions, tens of millions of dollars into this effort to demonize and then overthrow Aristide. So this idea that Aristide had some kind of a violent government, he actually eliminated more than 90 or 95% of the political violence in the country, first and foremost by getting rid of the Haitian army, which was the main source of violence. So this kind of false equivalence between Aristide and other violent rulers of Haiti is something that was really manufactured in the press.
Well, it is arguably a false equivalence. Let me ask Harry Fouché in Chicago. I'm gonna tee up my question with dipping into our inbox here and one of the many emails that have come through. This one from Ivianake Ekperi from Nigeria. And Ivianake Ekperi says, why recycle a leader who did more harm than good? Mr. Aristide needs to be kept far away if progress is to come to Haiti. What do you think, Harry Fouché?
Well, unfortunately, your listener in Mr. Akperi in Nigeria is not informed about what's happening in Haiti. Mr. Aristide is entitled to return to Haiti under the Haiti Constitution. And remember now, he was overthrown twice. And on both occasions, the U.S. played a role in his overthrowing. And we also have to remember that all these things are playing as a result of the fraudulent elections that took place on November 28. When Duvalier returned with the acquiescence of the Haitian government, this was a distraction put out by the Haitian government so they could carry on with the fraudulent election. But they did not expect people to actually rise up and demand that Mr. Aristide, President Aristide, be returned to the country. So this is what has happened now. And Mr. Aristide was issued his passport, which is rightfully his to ask for. And he should be returning to his country. In terms of, pretending that he's going to be a threat, he's going to be causing uprising, that is nonsense. He's entitled to be in his own country, and no one in Washington or Paris or in Ottawa should decide whether or not a Haitian citizen is entitled to be at his house.
Mark Weisbrot, do you foresee any possible moves from the U.S. and others to maybe stop him actually returning into the country? I know you touched on it a little bit, but what's the likelihood of that? I mean, let me dip into the inbox again. This one from Francois Prinsloo via Facebook. And Francois Prinsloo says, considering the U.S.'s role in forcing him to exile, what would America's reaction be in case of Aristide's return? What's the likelihood of the United States actually trying to stop him getting back to Haiti?
Well, I don't think they can do it overtly because it's too embarrassing to them to say now, especially after Duvalier returns, and Duvalier has returned with a long-time U.S. intelligence asset, Louis Jodel Chamblain, as the head of his security. And then they tried to say that Aristide can't come back. But you know that they're doing everything they can. I mean, Hillary Clinton, a week ago Sunday, flew to Haiti after doing 5 national television shows on Egypt in the midst of her worst foreign policy crisis ever, goes to Haiti to put pressure on President Préval, first of all, to accept the change of result of their elections, but I think also to force him not to let Aristide back into the country. And so far, it seems like that pressure did not work.
Well, with a country like Haiti, there's perpetually this discussion over democracy over stability, or stability over democracy. Even I asked Jose Miguel Insulza, the Secretary General of the OAS, what he thinks Haiti needs, democracy or stability?
Well, I would say that I understand the question, because I think that there is one thing that's lacking in Haiti. There's all the resources, all the money has come in all the world, the aid that comes from institutions that we still have to sort out to make it more efficient. But there's not enough productive investment. I think that the lack of productive investment is a problem in Haiti. It will probably increase when we deal with when they deal with the largest problem of infrastructure. But investment, as you well know, comes with stability.
Harry Fouché, not enough productive investment, says the OAS chief. What do you think?
It's a vicious circle, not enough productive investment. At the same time, there is actions that are destabilizing the country. What we need to have in Haiti is basically, reshuffling the deck completely. A lot of these policies from the OAS, from the United Nations, from the United States, from the European Union, the French, those policies are not working. We need to rethink. We need to redo what we are doing in Haiti. Haiti definitely need to have democracy.